Okay, so we are on session number 3. There's going to be 2 more after this next week and then the following week, and we're going to be done. And so we're going to cover tonight Jude verses 8 through 11. But let's review what we said last time in last week's session. We covered 3 great judgments. The Israelites in the wilderness, they were destroyed, verse 5. The angels who sinned, they were chained, verse 6. And then the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed in verse 7. Jude reminded his hearers that in the past, God severely judged anyone who backslides, apostatizes, or abandons the faith. Remember that the word apostasy, apostasis, means to turn away. You once were in the truth, now you've turned away from the truth. You were once in the faith, now you've turned away from the faith. So apostasia means to turn away from the faith. So to apostatize means you were a believer and now you're an unbeliever, basically. Over 600,000 corpses were scattered in the wilderness. That's a terrible judgment. And then we have to include all the other people that died out there that were women or maybe children that died. So there was a lot of burial grounds all over the wilderness. The angels, what a great fall that was, from glorious light to eternal darkness. And as Petey said, I'm sure they regretted what happened after they realized what they were doing. But sexual immorality brings incredible destruction. We see that with these angels. We see that with Sodom and Gomorrah, where God destroyed entire cities because of their sexual immorality. So tonight, let's go here to Jude chapter verses 8 through 11. Jude verses 8 through 11. Tonight we're going to talk about discerning false teachers. Now, before we read this, I want to say that tonight and tomorrow night, next time we study, next week, it's going to be ugly because we're going to venture into the world of false teachers and apostates. And you would think, Pastor Charlie, we don't want to talk about them. They're bad, they're wrong, they're false people, they're apostates. Why does Jude, why does 2 Peter, why does Paul, why does Jesus spend so much time talking about false teachers and false ministers and false prophets? Well, what did Jesus say? I was reading Matthew 24 today. What did Jesus say? What are going to be the signs of the end? What was the very first thing he said? Be careful that no one deceives you. Because many are going to come saying, I'm Christ, and going to deceive many. And many false Christs and many false prophets are going to do great signs and wonders to deceive, even if possible, the elect of God. And so, what I hope tonight and tomorrow, next week, when we cover verses 12 through 19, he's going to go into more detail about false teachers. I want to tell you that these scriptures are going to equip us and give us discernment so we can spot the fault right away. And even in the last week, Christians are telling me how great a certain person is, or they'll hand me a book, or they'll say, look, we need to see this person on TV, and that person's a false minister. And they're Christians telling me this. And so I am concerned about this. And last night I was watching reading an article about what Rob Bell is doing now. Rob Bell is actually holding conferences all over the United States. And it's a line that takes you hours to get into the theaters where he's speaking. And telling people, don't listen to these evangelical Christian pastors. They're deceiving you. And so he's telling them this, and you have to pay. He's charging them to come hear him. And the line is around the corner and packed out. And what he's putting into their minds is doubt and unbelief even about their own salvation. He's turning people away from the Lord. But yet when he's there, you think he sounds so good. He sounds so legitimate. he sounds like he's saying, it's good to question God. It's good to be angry with the Lord when things don't work out for your life. And people are buying into this, and they're interviewing. CNN and all these people are interviewing. Why are you here? Aren't you a Christian? Yeah, but I have problems with things that God is doing, you know. And so they go to hear Rob Bell, and he reinforces their doubts, their unbelief, and their rebellion. He's reinforcing that. And so when we see this, it's part of Holy Scripture. No, these are not verses that you guys are going to have on your refrigerator, okay? You're not going to have these verses on your refrigerator. It's not going to be in your bathroom. But what powerful verses they are for right now, because it's going to give you discernment for these last days. And you're going to be able to spot the phony right away. So when we go to the truth, we can see the phony right away, right? And that's the way they train. You know, they train bank tellers how to spot the phony. They don't give them all the different phony money. They give them the real money. Once you know what the real money looks like, you can spot the phony. So we're going to go to Jude and also reference 2 Peter and read what he says about the false people so we can be prepared. They're all cut out of the same mold. I'm going to tell you that right now. They're right out of the same mold. You look at one preacher after another. What are they doing? They're all doing the same things. And once you see that, you know it's a false minister. You just absolutely know it is. And so let's go now and read here verses 8 through 11. So now he's going to talk about the false teachers. He told us these three judgments, verse 5, 6, and 7, verse 8. Now, likewise, also these dreamers defile the flesh, they reject authority, and they speak evil of dignitaries, or you may have celestial beings if you have the NIV. Yet Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but instead he said, "The Lord rebuke you." But these speak evil of whatever they do not know, and whatever they know naturally, like brute beasts. In these things they corrupt themselves. Woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain. They have run greedily in the air of Balaam for profit, and they have perished in the rebellion of Korah. And Balaam was truly a for-profit prophet. We're going to see that in just a moment here. So let me give you kind of the overview. I'm going to take a couple of slides here. What is he saying here in these verses, and what he's going to say also in verses 12 through 19? So first of all, we want to notice all of these adjectives and pronouns: these, they, them, themselves. And if you look from verses 8 all the way down through verse 19, you're going to see those words about 25 times. You're going to see that, right? These dreamers, these speak, they do not, they know, they corrupt, woe to them, they have gone. Who is he talking about? He's talking about these ungodly men from verse 4. These men are the ungodly people who have crept in secretly into the churches. These are the apostates. These are the false teachers. We are going to enter into this world of false ministers, and it will be ugly. And so you're also going to see these, they, them are going to continue in the next week's study when we cover verses 12 through 19. And I think if I calculated them all right, around 15 times, depending on what translation you use, about 15 times he's going to use those words. Jude is also going to call them ungodly, grumblers, complainers, mockers, and sensual persons. So he's going to kind of describe who they are. On the next slide. In verses 8, 9, and 10 there's one Greek word that's going to link those verses together. You can't quite see it in the English translations, but when you look at the Greek text, you're going to see it right away. And it's the word in verb and in noun form, blasphemia, where we get blasphemy from, right? So blasphemusin, verse 8, blasphemeas, verse 9, blasphemusin in verse 10. And all of these are present tense Greek verbs, and all that means is these false teachers are doing this all the time. They're speaking evil of other people. So how do other translations translate these Greek words, okay? The translation I'm using, the New King James, speak evil of, verse 8, reviling, verse 9, speak evil of, verse 10. The NIV says slander, verse 8, slanderous, verse 9, and speak abusively against in verse 10. But the underlying word in all of these is the word for blasphemy, where we get our English word blasphemy. Other words that are used in other translations are insult, railing, revile, or to blaspheme. So blasphemia, the Greek word there, is to speak evil of someone, especially God, but it can also include other people. So when, in fact, in the New Testament, sometimes where it talks about don't speak evil of somebody, it's the word blasphemy. So usually when we think of blasphemy, we usually think of it as in regard to God, but you can speak evil of other people, and that's blasphemy as well. And that's the way the Greeks thought of it, and Greek literature thinks of it, and even in the New Testament, it has it that way. It's not exclusive to God. You can blaspheme other people. So what's the structure? So what he's going to do is he's going to give you a description in one verse, and then in the next verse, he's going to pull out an Old Testament example to show you what he's trying to say. And then in the next verse, he's going to talk about these godless people, a description, and then he's going to bring out another Old Testament example. Then he's going to bring another description out, and then he's going to bring another Old Testament example. He's going to bring out another description, and so on. So this is the pattern that Jude uses. He's going to describe these godless people, and then he's going to give you some Old Testament examples to help reinforce what he's trying to say. And certainly in the book of Jude, he was writing to a Jewish audience. So in the book of Jude, you really do gain an appreciation for the Old Testament. The Old Testament is so beautiful. It's so powerful. The stories, the New Testament is full of stories from the Old Testament. So I know a lot of people don't like the Old Testament. It's too long. It has too many names. It's too many books. It's kind of boring. It's got the law of God. There's too much detail. But the Old Testament, of course, is the Word of God. It's the truth of God, and we should read it, read it, read it, read it, read it, because you can't even understand the book of Jude unless you know what the Bible was saying in the Old Testament. All right, so Jude is good on the Old Testament. All right, so let's start here now, beginning with verse 8, and let's look here at what he's going to say to us about false teachers and false prophets and apostates. So he starts out with these words, likewise also. Okay? If you have the NIV, it says, in the very same way. So that's what I want to show you, right? Just like the Israelites rebelled, just like the angels rebelled, sexual immorality, just like the Sodom and Gomorrah people were in sexual immorality. In the same way, these guys are going to do the same thing. It's the same type of rebellion, corruption, sexual immorality. We're going to see it all over again. So, in the very same way, verse 8 comes right after verse 7. Remember we saw that? In a similar manner. And it also came right after verse 6, whatever the angels did. So the people who are the false teachers do what the Sodomites did, and the Sodomites did what the angels did. So they're all kind of doing one right after the other. They're doing the same thing. So in like manner, and also indicate the similarities of the people Jude is writing about, with these three groups mentioned in verses 5 through 7, but particularly with the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so the apostates and the false teachers all walk similar paths. Because once you move away from Jesus, once you move away from the truth, you're going to go into darkness. Because Jesus is the light, and if you follow him, you're going to stay in the light. But the minute you move away from Jesus, who is the light, you're going to go into darkness. And you know that's true in the natural. That's true of people who turn away from the Lord. The minute they move away from Jesus, they're going to go into darkness because Jesus is the light. I was reviewing a book called Angels of Light, based on Paul's statement that he made in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Remember where Paul says that these ministers, they transform themselves, and they look like angels of light, but they're really, and he says, no wonder even Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. These false apostles that Paul was talking about to the Corinthians. I was looking through all those different chapters of this one book called the Angels of Light book. It's a Christian book. And in there he talks about, David Koresh and Jim Jones and the Reverend Moon, and all these other false cult leaders that we've had over the years. And one thing you'll notice about all those cult leaders especially, they all do the same things. They all are doing the same things over and over again. There's nothing new under the sun. One false teacher looks just like the other. And in a minute, we're going to look at Balaam, who is the prototype false teacher. If you know Balaam, he's on TBN today. Balaam is on TBN. Balaam is on Christian radio today. The same thing that Balaam did, for-profit ministry, sexual immorality, all those things, the Balaam ministry is active today. Same thing, nothing new under the sun. All right, so I'm on the top of page 38. He says that these are dreamers. And actually, it's a Greek present tense verb, and one translation calls it by dreaming. They live their lives based on their revelations, visions, and dreams. They always have, God told me last night. Now, I believe that God speaks to people. He did in the book of Acts, supernaturally, through visions, through dreams, those kinds of things. But when it becomes, God told me last night, and you end up doing corrupt things, then you're using these visions and these dreams to justify your actions. In fact, you're using God's authority to justify the corruption that you're doing. The United Bible Society translators say, and I put a star by this one, they justify their sinful acts by special revelations they claim to receive from God. And we saw that last week, right, with Carlton Pearson. When he was confronted by the leaders of his church, he was confronted by Oral Roberts, he was confronted by all those African-American bishops, and in every case, he said, what did he say? God spoke to me. God spoke to me that there's universalism, that everybody's going to get saved. Well, sorry, God did not speak to you. But they justify what they're doing by claiming that God told them to do this. And you see that so prevalent today with so many ministers. God said this, God said that. Green says, those who lay claim to direct, immediate knowledge of the Almighty's mind commonly fall into the same dangers today. Their source of knowledge and inspiration is not the truth of God's Word, but their own dreams and revelations. Now, I want to just caution all of you here, and I want to say that it's wisdom to not say, thus saith the Lord, when you're prophesying. Don't say that. Because if you're wrong, you're making God out to be a liar. And so I never, ever say, thus saith the Lord in a prophecy. Don't say it, because it may not be the Lord. And I think what's better and what keeps us more humble is to say to people, I believe the Lord is saying this, and then speak that, and rather than saying, thus saith the Lord. The people who can say, thus saith the Lord, are Jeremiah and Isaiah and Jesus was the Lord, so he was the living word. But Moses and those guys, they can say, thus saith the Lord, because they were supernaturally, divinely inspired by God. And so to protect ourselves and to keep us humble, just avoid that language altogether, thus saith the Lord. I don't get mad. I don't get mad if people use that language, but I think it protects us from getting into error and opening the door to abusing God's name. And so don't, if you can at all avoid, don't use thus saith the Lord. Just think about it. If it's thus saith the Lord, then what you're saying is infallible. It has to be infallible. It cannot be a lie. It's absolutely the truth. And so we can't use that. It's better to just be more careful and say, I believe that the Lord is saying this to you right now. There's a phrase here that Jude uses. And again, Jude used the phrase last time that we had, that was a little weird, where he says they've gone after strange flesh in verse 7. Remember that? They've gone after strange flesh. But this actually was a common phrase that was used at that time for sexual immorality. So when it says they defile the flesh, that means they were defiling their body. It was another way of saying they're into sexual immorality. In fact, we're going to see that phrase again in the last session when we get to verse 23, where it says we're to be hating even the garment defiled by the flesh. And so, again, it's a phrase for sexual morality. When Peter was saying this over in 2 Peter 2:10, when he was kind of matching verse for verse what Jude is saying, he wrote it this way: they walk according to the flesh in the lust of uncleanness. That's another way of saying sexual morality. Moo, in his commentary, says, by using the phrase pollute flesh or defile flesh for the false teacher's immorality, Jude associates them closely with the sodomites who went after other flesh. So what the sodomites did, what the angels did, these guys are doing now. If you have the NIV, it says they pollute their own bodies. And as you know, most sins are coming from the heart, right? Jesus said that. The fornication, the adulteries, the murders, the thefts, the covetousness, the pride, all that kind of stuff is coming from the heart. But when you do sexual immorality, your whole body is engaged in that sin, right? And that's what Paul says here in 1 Corinthians 6:18. He says, flee sexual immorality. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality is actually sinning against his own body, using his own physical body to commit these sins. The biggie that comes in now that both Peter and Jude point out is they reject authority. They're not under any authority. Peter called it, I think the King James uses despise authority, but 2 Peter 2:10 calls it also despise authority. And you'll notice the word kuri teta, that means lordship. And it comes from the word kurios, Lord. Whenever you see Jesus as Lord, the Lord Jesus in the Bible, it's kurios. So the person that they really have a problem with is the Lord Jesus Christ, because he's the source of all authority. Hilliard says, reject authority. This refers to the lordship of God or the lordship of Christ and corresponds to the earlier, they deny Jesus Christ, our only sovereign and Lord, from verse 4. Do you remember that, where they talked about turning the grace of God into lewdness, and they end up denying the Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ? One of the things you'll find about these people, whether it's a cult leader or a false teacher that you see on TV, that's one thing. They don't submit to any authority. They are their own authority. They determine what is the real authority. Moose says, almost certainly, Jude means that the false teachers throw off the lordship of Christ and or of God. And he says, see verse 4 again. And so once you're out from under the Lord's authority and you're your own authority, that's when it becomes real dangerous. And I put that, an apostate rejects authority because he is his own authority and he is submitted to no one. That's a big danger. In fact, today I was helping a minister be able to get into something, and this ministry wouldn't accept him because they said he's not under anybody's authority. They go, he's on his own. Is he submitted to your authority? And I go, well, not really. I said, I've been involved with him in ministry in the past, but they wanted to know, is he under anybody's authority? And the false teachers, the false ministers are people who reject authority. They despise it. They don't want anybody to tell them what to do. And wow, that is so prevalent today. And that's why it's hard to... you want me to tell you why it's hard to get a false teacher off of the TV? You know why it's hard? Why doesn't anybody question what they're doing? Well, you know, people have told me that, Pastor, why don't you call the ministry and tell and report him, you know, and call. You know why? Because he's his own authority. He's the one that's determining what gets on TV or not. He's the one that's calling the shots. And when you try to find out who is he submitted to, he's submitted to no one. And so it's a real problem we have. Now, what Jude is getting ready to say here in this next section, he's going to show you their arrogance. And that's another thing. They're very arrogant, very proud, haughty people. And he's going to use this phrase here called speak evil of dignitaries, or speak evil of celestial beings. What does that mean? Okay? So literally in the Greek, there's that word again, blasphemousin doxas. Okay? Doxa is a word that just means the glory, the splendor, and it's usually related to the glory of God. The grandeur, his brightness, his magnificence. And Jude is going to use that word doxa in verse 24, where it says there at the end of verse 24, before the presence of his glory, doxa. And then verse 25, to God our Savior, who alone is wise, be glory. He has it again there, doxa. Okay, so doxa means glory. It's used of the glory of God. But what does this mean here? That these false teachers speak evil of dignitaries. Well, the NIV uses slander celestial beings. The New American Standard uses they revile angelic majesties. Another one, the Holman Bible says they blaspheme glorious beings. The New Living Translation say they scoff at supernatural beings. And then another one says they insult angels. Now, my translation of the Greek blasphemousin doxas is they blaspheme glorious ones, because that's what it's talking about. It's talking about glorious ones. In this case, they're angelic beings. So Bloom admits right away, slander celestial beings. How and why? Jude doesn't say. He just says that they do it. So one of the things we can do to help us understand what's happening here is to ask this question. Is he talking here about evil angels or demons, or is he talking about good angels? What is he talking about? Well, the answer actually is pretty easy. Once you read 2 Peter and you read the next verse, we know that it's speaking here about demons and evil spirits and the devil. Why do we know that? Why do we know that? Well, one thought that would be like contrary to that is why would Jude want to call good angels or evil angels glorious ones? Why would they say it that way? Aren't they just bad angels, evil angels? Well, actually, these angelic beings, good or bad, have a certain amount of glory. They are powerful, they're majestic, they're strong, they can do a lot of damage to people. But we know that he's talking about evil angels, demon spirits, because if you go to 2 Peter and read what 2 Peter said about them, he said this, these men, talking about these false teachers, are not afraid to slander celestial beings. Yet even angels, although they are stronger and more powerful than these men, they do not bring slanderous accusations against such beings in the presence of God, of the Lord. So, can you see that? These angels, who are good angels, they don't even bring a slanderous accusations against these beings in the presence of the Lord. So these good angels don't even bring a slanderous accusations against demons or evil spirits. We also know, if you go to the next verse, where he says, yet even Michael the archangel didn't bring an accusation against the devil. So that of course, the devil is the ultimate of all the evil demons and the evil angels. So we know then that speaking evil of these dignitaries, he's talking about demons or evil spirits. Barclay has it right when he says, if the greatest of the good angels refuse to speak evil of the greatest of the evil angels, even in circumstances like that, surely no human being may speak evil of any angel. And that's important. I'm going to take time here to just talk about that for a minute. The parallel from verse 9, Schreiner says, where Michael refused to pronounce his own judgment on the devil, suggests that Jude referred to evil angels in verse 8. It is difficult, of course, to discern from verse 8 alone whether the glories or the glorious ones were good or evil angels, but verse 9 tips the scale in favor of demons. Now, how many of you have seen this? I grew up in it, in the churches that I was in when I was a young Christian man, and I've seen it on TV, where Christians will walk around and say the devil, he's that little puny devil, and I'm going to step on his little head and crush him and all that. Oh, man, when I see that, I cringe. Because while the Bible does teach us, and Jesus told us that we have authority over them, this scripture right here is warning us that not even Michael the archangel dared to say anything like that to the devil. I don't know about you, but how many of you here think you can whip Michael the archangel? How many of you think you're more powerful than him? How many of you think you could deal with him? No. So what Jude is after here, what he's trying to show is the very arrogance of these people, that they could speak evil of these things when Michael the archangel didn't even do that. And Michael the archangel, and as we saw, if we go back there to 2 Peter, it says the angels, even though they're stronger and more powerful than these false teachers, they don't even bring a slanderous accusation against such beings in the presence of the Lord. Well, we need to remember from Romans 16, I believe it was verse 20, that it's the God of peace who will crush Satan under our feet. God, the God of peace is going to do that, not us. And you guys remember, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, you remember when the apostles came back to the Lord and they said, Lord, even the demons are subject to us through your name. And that's very important. It was through the name of the Lord that the demons were subjected to the apostles. But right away, Jesus stopped them and he said, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. And so he's saying, don't get proud, because the devil did that. And here, look what happened to him. He fell because of his pride. Pride always causes you to fall. He says, yes, I have given you authority over the demons, and nothing of the enemy will harm you. He says, but don't rejoice over that. He goes, just be glad your names are written in heaven. So keep a humble attitude is all Jude is trying to teach here, because these false teachers, that's what they do. They are so arrogant that they're even willing to do this. And so don't do that with demons. Okay. And I say this, and we said it before in a class not that long ago in one of the Sunday services. The devil is not afraid of you. He's not. He is afraid of Jesus. He's afraid of who's in you. And if you're proud like he's proud, Satan can't cast out Satan. And so what the devil trembles at is humility. When he sees a humble Christian on his knees Trusting the Lord for deliverance, that scares him. And so that's what James says. When you submit to God, you can resist the devil and he'll flee from you. Why is he running from you? He runs from humility because he's so arrogant. He can't handle humility. Arrogant people cannot handle humble people. And so if you want to resist the devil, you and I have to resist pride in our life. And we must stay humble before God. How do you deal with the devil? Command him to leave. That's all you have to do in the name of Jesus. But don't get arrogant and don't think he's just a puny little devil and I crush his little head. Well, a lot of the false teachers are doing that, by the way, on Christian television right now. It wasn't even that long ago I saw somebody doing that, and it's like, oh, not even Michael the archangel did that. But these guys, they do it, and it just reveals their arrogance, and that's what we don't want. So, Green says, false teachers are arraigned for lust. They defile the flesh. They are rebellious. They're into rebelliousness. They reject authority. And they're also very irreverent, which shows their arrogance, because they even willing to speak evil of celestial beings. So why then bring up this whole story of Michael the archangel contending with the body of Moses? And again, it was to reinforce what he just finished saying in verse 8. These people are willing to speak evil of dignitaries and celestial beings, but Michael, the archangel, who's way greater than them, he wasn't even willing to do that. So he's reinforcing it. Verse 9 reinforces what was just said in verse 8. Well, this story that is mentioned here in verse 9, you will not find it in the Old Testament. Michael the archangel is in the Old Testament. The burial of Moses is in the Old Testament. But this story here where Michael is fighting with the devil over the body of Moses is not in the Old Testament. Okay? Some of the early Christian commentators say that it was in a story called The Assumption of Moses. And it was an apocryphal Jewish work. And today we only have bits and pieces of that story, so we don't really know what it says. Some of the early church fathers read it back then when the document was available, and they said that story of the archangel Michael contending with the devil over the body of Moses, that was from the Assumption of Moses. But my belief is that the scriptures are divinely inspired by God. And the reason Jude wrote this was the Holy Spirit showed him that this is what happened, and he wrote it down. But that word yet, right at the very beginning, verse 9, the false teachers, they speak evil of celestial beings, yet, contrary to what they did, Michael the archangel wasn't even willing to do that. Instead, what he said, may the Lord rebuke you. That's the best way. And I apologize that you have to see the devil's cheeks here on this picture. It just happened to be something that I saw online that showed them, Michael and the devil fighting over the body of Moses. Bloom says this, so if he, a mighty archangel, had respect for celestial powers, Jude is saying, how much more should mere human false teachers do so? Connor says this is indeed an example of humility. It should be an example to all saints. None can rail upon or insult the devil. Michael left the final word of judgment in the hands of the Lord. And once again, a reminder, Luke 10. Jesus said, I saw Satan falling down like lightning from heaven. We're to submit to God, then we can resist the devil and he will flee to us. But we have to humble ourselves under God's mighty hand. I love what Bachheim says here. This, I think, is a classic statement. Where the archangel Michael feared to tread, these fools rush right in. It's like Michael wouldn't go over there, and these false teachers go, let me go over there. I'll take care of this. You know what? Pride will get us all into trouble. The devil, it opens the door for the devil to attack us because we take on the same nature as he does. We need the nature of Jesus, and he was meek and lowly in heart. And that's what the devil fears. I want to tell you, we've said this before, we said it in the Healing the Sick class about rebuking the devil. I think the best way to rebuke the devil is have the Lord do it for you. And so when I pray, when the devil is attacking me or somebody in the church and there's demonic activity, I pray, may the Lord rebuke you, devil. And let the Lord rebuke the devil. I tell you, if the Lord rebukes the devil is rebuked. And we already said that, right, in those teachings. When Jesus rebuked the evil spirit, he said, you deaf and dumb spirit, come out of him in the name of Jesus. That's the way you say it, right? And that's how you rebuke the evil one. It's in the command that you speak, not in you saying, I rebuke you, devil. Because when you say, I rebuke you, devil, that means nothing. It doesn't do anything. It's just like we said, you know, if you see your son, he doesn't clean his room, and you walk up to him and you say, I rebuke you. You haven't cleaned your room. That doesn't do anything. He's going to stare at you and go, what? No, son, clean your room. Put that downstairs. Wash your clothes. Do all this. Fix your room, whatever. Then that's the rebuke, is when you command them to do something. So let's go to verse 10 here. It says, but these speak evil of what they do not know, and whatever they know. So there's things that these false teachers don't know, and there's other things that they know very well. And can I tell you this? They don't know very much about the spiritual world. That's why they speak the way they do. But they sure know a lot about sexual morality. And you see that over and over. They don't know certain things, but they do know other things. And Jude nails it right here. There are things they know, and there are things they don't know. So what is it that they don't know? Well, Bloom says, where it says, yet these men, that connotes contempt. Michael the archangel wouldn't do it, but these guys do. And so, let's read here what Schreiner says. When Jude said that these men slandered what they did not comprehend, he again had in mind the glorious angels of verse 8. The CEV says, but these people insult powers that they don't know anything about. Wow. Top of page 41. These people claim spiritual superiority, but Jude now asserts that in actual fact they know little, if anything, of the spiritual world that they despise and abhor. Green says it this way, the point is clear. What they understand is the physical appetites they share with the animals, which have no share in their rationality. They are alogazoa. That's the Greek word, alogazoa. Unreasoning animals, brute beasts. How ironical that when men should claim to be visionary, they should actually be ignorant. When they think themselves superior to the common man, they should actually be on the same level as animals and be corrupted by the very practices in which they seek liberty and self-expression. The next slide. The NLT says, like unthinking animals, they do whatever their instincts tell them, and so they bring about their own destruction. One of the early church fathers said, they are so caught up in lust that they are no different from dumb animals. You guys know that, right? As a little kid growing up, we had a lot of cats and dogs that ran around in our neighborhood. And you know what they did when they were out there on the street and they were in heat. You know what those animals did, right? They just did whatever came natural to them to do. And Jude is saying they're just like that. They just come whatever comes natural to them. And what comes natural to them is sexual immorality. And besides money, what is the one thing that has gotten ministers into more trouble than anything else? You guys know what it is. Sexual morality. And so we need to pray for the ministers not to get involved in sexual morality. We deal with it all the time, people getting involved in sexual morality. You know what? I think if we pastors would just acknowledge that we're weak like everybody else, and if we would humble ourselves and put protective measures around us, we don't have to fall into sexual immorality. Our church here has been scandalized over the years by sexual immorality. And I keep saying this, and I tell people, pray for me as the pastor. I'm weak. I have temptations like anybody else. But one thing I do know is I don't ever want to put myself in a position where I'm tempted. So if you do that, you don't have to fall. So, and I know you guys have heard me say this, but just keep praying for me in this way. You will never, ever, ever, ever find me in a hotel by myself. Never. I always have my son, I always have my daughter, or I have my wife. And it's hard to run off with anybody when they're with you. And when I was younger and my kids were younger, whenever I went anywhere, usually I always took my kids with me. I go, let's go in the car. We're going to go for a ride. Why? Because I can't run off with somebody when your daughter's in the back seat. And so people ask me, aren't you ever tempted, Pastor, to run off with somebody? I can't. My wife is right next to me. So just avoid the temptation altogether. Always have your wife next to you. That's what I'm telling right now on the video camera, you ministers. And I'm telling you right now, I've heard pastor after pastor share stories of them going to hotels by themselves, and I go, what a disaster that can be when you're by yourself. You know why? Because the enemy always tempts us when we're by ourselves. All these ministers that fall, they're by themselves. They take off on trips to go speak at a conference, they're by themselves. And you can believe it, women are going to be right around there and the enemy will put them in your path. So my wife told me the other day, because I was booking stuff to go up north here in August and September. She says, you know what, I don't feel like going. I go, if you're not going, I'm not going either. So you're going to go because I got to speak at this conference. So you're going to go. She goes, okay, I'll go. So I can't go anywhere unless my wife goes with me. And here's the way I look at it. If somebody asks me to go somewhere and speak somewhere or do some ministry somewhere and my wife can't go with me, I assume it's not God's will for me to go. And that way, I never have to worry, did you run off with somebody? I didn't. Irma was right there with me. I did run off with somebody. It was her I ran off with. But pray for ministers. I already know I'm weak in that area. I already know that. I know men are weak in that area. I don't care who you are. Men are weak in that area, so I'm just saying it right now. I'm saying it again to you listening to me. We need to put protective measures around us. We never counsel somebody of the opposite sex by ourselves. Never. We don't do that. If they want to talk to us, my wife is going to be right there. All the women that have ever needed counsel from me, personally, for anything, they go to my house and my wife is standing right next to me. So my wife is my protector. I can just share this with you right now. A couple months ago, there was a woman came to this church. She was very seductive. She had a seductive spirit, and she came up afterward to come and talk to me up here in the front after the service, and I saw her coming, and I told Irma. And she already knew. When I went like that, she stood right next to me, and can I tell you, that lady got mad when she saw my wife. Irma's my protection. Because you got your wife standing right next to you, there's nothing's going to take place. And so that happens. The enemy can bring somebody in and they just start talking to you and all that stuff. Nope. Irma, right over here. Irma's my shield. She is. And it's important that we have a wife with us like that. Why did Jesus send the disciples out 2 by 2? When I go to Jamaica, I take people with me. And the last time I went, when I went by myself, I stayed with Pastor Winston and his wife. And everywhere I went, I demanded an escort to go with me. So everywhere I went, another pastor escorted me everywhere. Even if I went to go buy candy down the street, they escorted me. Why? I'm safe when another brother is with me. Praise the Lord. Jude here refers to those who eat, drink, indulge in sexual activity, and do other things which are common to animals who lack the faculty of reason. In the book that I'm writing, I actually list all the different nationally known ministers who have fallen into sexual immorality. Great men of God, great preachers, great churches, great everything, but they had a weakness, a secret that finally came out, and it was too late. And that's why I've been preaching on Sunday morning about your thought life. All of it starts in your thoughts. You have that corrupt, you're going to fall. Schreiner says the one thing they did understand, however, was the power of physical appetites. Their physical desires urged them on daily, and like irrational animals, they were driven by sexual instinct rather than by reason. I'm going to give you this example about apostates among us. And I want to give you this example not because I'm trying to expose a man, because this man has already died. He's not even alive anymore. He died in 2009. But I want to show you something using this man's example, and it's classic of many other ministers that are in the same category. Many years ago, this man here, Bishop Earl Paulk, was nationally known. How many of you remember Bishop Earl Paulk? You remember seeing him on TV. Had a mega church in Atlanta, in Decatur, a suburb of Atlanta. During the 80s and 90s, his church grew a lot, explosive growth. His ministry internationally grew. They had 24 pastors on staff, 12,000 members, Bible college, schools, worldwide TV audience. They even had a credit union bank in the church. You could walk in, it was a credit union. You could write checks based on their church. That's how much money they had. At millions of dollars, they had their own bank. And the church was prospering. He was being invited to speak everywhere. And his brothers, too. He had a brother named Don, and a person who they thought was his nephew. It turned out it was his own son. But during that whole time that they were experiencing explosive growth, and they were training ministers, and they were raising up pastors, and their ministry was expanding, he was having multiple affairs, and he was molesting women even in his own family. In fact, because there was a paternity lawsuit that came against him, his brother, Don Polk, and his wife had a son named Donald Earl. D.E., they called him D.E. He's a pastor right now in Atlanta. He's a pastor. They did a paternity DNA test, and they found out that that wasn't Donald's son, that was Earl's son. So he had had sex with his sister-in-law who produced this child. And nobody knew the story until it came out in a paternity test that it was Earl's son. Molested a daughter, molested a granddaughter. And all the while, his church is exploding. And he's preaching everywhere. So when people call me regularly, just the other day, somebody said, but Pastor, you should see all the powerful things going on at that church. I go, they may be lying signs and wonders. If I could name people right now, and it would make people mad, because this is going to go on YouTube. It would make people mad if I told you what some of these ministers are doing. I know some of them personally from what they've done to churches, how they've ripped churches off. They're involved in sexual immorality. They're teaching heresies. They have incredible belief. T.D. Jakes, these people, they're he doesn't even believe in the Trinity. He believes a heresy about who Jesus is, and yet he's one of the most popular preachers in the country. People give me CDs and books of him all the time from this church. They hand me, have you seen T.D. Jakes' latest book? Have you seen T.D. Jakes? No, I don't want to read that. He believes a heresy about Jesus that was rejected by the early church. It's one of the most popular heresies that the early church rejected. He was a oneness Pentecostal. He was Jesus only. His early life, that's what he was raised in. Well, I better not get on that, because don't send any letters to me, you on YouTube. But they sell millions of books. One of these ministers, I won't name him right now because I'll get in trouble. He went to a church, preached one night, a Sunday night sermon, and they were going to give him $3,000 for preaching that sermon. And he says, I'm not leaving your church until you add another zero to that check. And he ripped that church off. And he did not leave there, and he said he was going to blackmail that church, and he was going to tell other people, and they wrote him a check for $30,000. And if I told you who he was, almost every one of you here would know who he is. And I know the pastor of the church. He was in Cleveland, Ohio, and if you ask me after the service, I'll tell you who it is. But what I want to tell you about these stories is I'm not trying to make you skeptical of everybody. I don't want you to be suspicious of everybody. But we need to be discerning. Because the person behind the pulpit may not be the same person at home. And all you see is the anointing, the anointed preacher from back here. Yeah, but he may be a rat over there when he's at home. So don't assume, brothers and sisters, because you see success, that God is in it. That's the American model of Christianity. Sorry. In fact, one pastor friend of mine told me, he says, you know what we see in many American churches today is not the Christianity of the Bible, but American Christianity. Because it works with an American business model. And the American business model is all about success. Success. Get bigger, get big numbers, get everything big. Well, I believe people got saved. We want to see people get saved. We want to see thousands of people get saved. Thousands of people got saved in the book of Acts. I'm not against that. But the character of the leader has to be right. They have to be humble and holy. The two H's, I'm preaching that right now. We have to be humble and holy, or it doesn't fly with God. And if they're proud and arrogant and doing all kinds of defiling things in private, it's not going to work. And they'll come crashing down like this man came crashing down. And so many ministers, when they're involved in sexual immorality, end up getting terrible diseases in their body. And he got a terrible cancer in his body that just ate him away, like a lot of these guys that do these things. Let's go to verse 11 and finish out here. Jude now is going to concentrate on 3 individuals that came under judgment, whereas before it was 3 groups. And he says, woe to them. Woe is found a lot. That's not the woe that you say to a horse when you're riding a horse, like, whoa, this is a woe of judgment. The NLT says, what sorrow awaits them. Now they are in for real trouble. The United Bible Society translators say, woe to them can be translated, how horrible it will be for them. How severely they will be punished by God, or God will surely punish them. When I was reading what Rob Bell is doing and how he's having these meetings all over the country and thousands of people are flocking and he's charging and Christians are lining up to hear what he has to say, I was mad. I was mad. I was saying, God, you know, and then I just stood back and I said, oh, the punishment that awaits this man. The judgment that's going to come on him for what he is doing, turning people away from Jesus. where he once preached the gospel in his church. Now, look what he's doing. Cotter, in reviewing these three guys, Cain, Balaam, and Korah, he says apostasy begins with a way, and then it leads to a wandering, and it eventually becomes a rebellion. That's what happens. They turn away, they start wandering. Before you know it, they're in a rebellion like Korah. These are the three stooges. You guys remember the three stooges, right? Larry, Moe, and Curly. Well, these are the three stooges from the Old Testament. Cain, Balaam, and Korah. Why bring up these stories? These are negative people. Why? Because he's trying to tell you the false teachers are just like them. Cain killed his brother, butchered his own brother out of anger and rage and jealousy, ended up murdering his brother. Why? Because he belonged to the evil one, it says in 1 John 3:11 and 12. He says he belonged to him. He murdered his brother in cold blood, killed him because he was envious of his brother, because his brother's actions were righteous and his were evil. So Cain was an evil man. And the Bible speaks a lot about the blood of Abel. So he was slaughtered. That's the Greek word there. He was literally slaughtered by his brother. Whether he used a sharp instrument or a rock, he slaughtered him, murdered his own brother. The guy I want to focus on for just a moment is Balaam. Balaam is the prototype false prophet. If you want to get the mold for all the false prophets, just get the Balaam mold. Balaam is classic on stubbornness, a stubborn guy. Even though God told him not to go, went anyway. Kept asking God, can I go? Can I go? No. Can I go? No. Even the angel, even a donkey rebukes him. Even the angel of the Lord stands in his way. And he still goes. And he goes because there was a lot of money involved. And the guy raised the ante. Remember, came Balak, he raised the ante. Initially, he sent some lesser officials with a little bit of money, and then he sent some bigger officials with a lot more money, and that motivated him. Oh yeah, we got a lot of money in this. And the Bible says a lot about it. Even Jesus spoke about Balaam. Peter spoke about Balaam. Jude speaks here about Balaam. Was he a prophet? Yeah, he was for profit, all right. He's the prototype. If you want to really study false prophets, go look at Balaam. A guy who rejects authority, a guy who's in it for the money, and in the end, he ends up cursing all of Israel. What a terrible, terrible thing. A couple of people in our church have told me, that one person told me, Pastor, the Lord has shown me that one of the reasons why our church doesn't grow is because we're on Fowler here, Avenue, and people are driving by and they're cursing our church. That's what they told me, that they're cursing our church, and that's why we don't grow. And I just sat there and I said, that's very interesting. And I told this person, I said, you know what? I absolutely have lost no sleep whatsoever, not even 1 minute of sleep, worrying about if somebody's driving by and cursing our church. What I'm way more concerned about is the heart of the people inside the church. That's what I'm concerned about. Because you remember what Balaam did when he went up on top of the mountain and he was getting ready to curse them? Remember what? He ended up blessing them. God turned his curse into a blessing, and he ended up blessing him. And it got Balak so mad. I hired you to curse him, and you come over here and bless him. And the Bible says there, as you read through Numbers and Deuteronomy and all that, it was because God loved the people that he would not allow Balaam to curse the people of God. Well, we've done this study before. Do you remember where the tabernacle was, right? There were 3 tribes to the north, 3 tribes to the south, 3 tribes to the east, 3 tribes to the west. And God had certain tribes in certain positions, right? The smaller tribes were up north, the bigger tribes were down south. And do you know, if you map it all out and you calculate all the numbers, do you know that big old layout makes a giant cross? because the small tribes were here, the big tribes were here, and the 3 tribes on each side were almost equal in size. And so when Balaam looked out and he saw that camp, he saw a big giant cross over there. Out there as Israel was laid out in the camp. Go do the math. Calculate all the numbers in the book of Numbers, and you'll see that's why he couldn't curse them. There was a cross out there, and Jesus took the curse for us. And so we don't have to be cursed. So I don't worry about some witch or somebody driving by cursing us, or I don't care what they do out there. I'm worried about what's happening in here, in the heart of the people. That's what's going to corrupt us. The reason I say that is because Balaam kept trying to curse the people, and God kept turning his blessing, his curse into a blessing. And that made Balaam, so you know what he did? He kept trying to curse him, God turned it into a blessing. Kept trying to curse him, God turned it into a blessing. Finally, he got Balak the king, and he says, tell you what, I know how to corrupt these guys. Go get the girls. Go get the girls. So what Balak goes, aha, you can't curse them from the outside, but we'll corrupt them from the inside. And so Balak went over and got all those women from Moab. So Numbers 22, 23, and 24, he's trying to curse them. It all turns into a blessing. You get to chapter 25, what is it? All these Moabite women show up. They have a little party, they dance, they start taking clothes off, they start worshiping idols, and they start having sex with the Moabite women. A plague breaks out and curses the people of Israel. How did he do it? He used sexual immorality. And that's what Jesus said about Balaam in the book of Revelation. He warned that one church, one of the churches there, he warned them about the doctrine of Balaam. Don't let that doctrine get into your church, because it's going to lead to idolatry and sexual immorality. And Balaam is still alive and well today. Top of page 43. What happened to Balaam? He ended up being killed by the sword. His name means not of the people. His father's name means burning. And he was from a city that was so filled with witchcraft that it was called Pethor, which means soothsayer. A soothsayer is a person who predicts the future. He's a palm reader. He's an astrologer. He's a practitioner of the occult. What does Peter say about him in 2 Peter 2:15? He loved the wages of unrighteousness. Jude here says he ran greedily. That's where he did. Here is the real motive behind Balaam's counsel: reward, wages, profit. This is indeed characteristic of a Balaam ministry, prostituting his gift for money. And we have a lot of people that do that. I'm going to tell you this. There was a lady in our church. Some of you may remember her. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I may get in trouble for it, but I'm going to say it anyway. There was a lady in our church named Betty Zebar. You guys remember Betty? She started having dementia problems and eventually had Alzheimer's. Do you know that every time she came to prayer meeting, she handed me an envelope with $200 in cash and gave it to me? Every meeting she came and handed me cash and gave it to me. $200. And cash, and gave it to me. Before you know it, I had all this money. You know what the Lord told me? It's a test. I want to see what you're going to do with it. You know what I did? I called Betty's daughter, and I gave back over $1,000 in cash that she was giving me. And it was shortly after that they put her in this home right over here because she was having problems with Alzheimer's. Man, I could have said, man, this is pretty good money. I kind of like these prayer meetings coming over here. It was all a test. And it shocked the daughter, who was not a believer. She goes, you mean you're returning this money? And I wasn't trying to be righteous or anything, but I knew the Lord said, I'm going to see where your heart is at. Are you really here to pastor people? Or are you here to take this money that's coming to you? She was kind of losing what she was doing. But it's a test to see what's in her heart. Balaam was in it for the money. I just want to tell you personally, I'm glad that this church does not emphasize money in taking the offerings. We should. I think maybe more often we should take offerings so people can give, and we need to teach people about giving. But I'm glad we do not make it the big deal, because you can take advantage of people and suck money out of their pockets into our pockets. That's not why we're here. We're not here to do that. We don't need a Balaam ministry. There's already too many Balaams. Balaam taught Balak how to seduce Israel through sexual morality with Moabite women. All you have to do is read Numbers 25. Jesus warned people about holding to the doctrine of Balaam. Isn't that amazing? There were people that were holding to the doctrine of Balaam. It wasn't that they had some tract or a piece of paper that says, this is the doctrine of Balaam. No, he was saying, here are people who are using sexual morality and idolatry. And Jesus says, you got to reject that. Numbers 31:16, it says, look, these women caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. Balaam couldn't curse them, but he did seduce them. And that's what happens with these ministers. They may not be able to curse you with their words, but they know how to seduce you with their actions. And the last one is Korah. Korah and Moses, if you study the thing in the Exodus and Numbers, they were first cousins. Their fathers were brothers. Ishar was Korah's father. Amram was Moses' father. You can read that in Exodus. And Korah was part of the Kohathites. And the Kohathites were the people that carried the furniture that was inside, in the holy place and the Holy of Holies. The Kohathites carried those. They were sanctified Levites that carried the most holy pieces of furniture whenever the Israelites moved. Korah was one of the guys that took those poles and they held the most sacred objects of worship and they moved it from one location to another. That was Korah's job. And can I tell you, Korah was given a position of authority, but what did he do? Just like the angels, he went beyond his limits. And he stood up to Moses and said, well, God speaks to us too. And he went beyond the limits. He went beyond what God gave him to do. And look where it ended up. Isn't that a scary painting there? The earth is opening up. And all of his family and all these guys are falling right into Sheol. And it closes up over them. Oh, that must have been a scary thing to see that. Korah is mentioned because he seized a teaching authority which God had not granted to him. He wanted to take a position where God had never given him the position. And the last one, again, I want to warn our church about it. I write about him, Rob Bell, and his book Love Wins in my teaching on hell, where I talk about hell, yes, Bell, no. He is the most popular heretic today in America. And what did we say about Carlton Pearson last week? Once you remove a foundation stone out, the rest of the building starts collapsing. Right after he said there's universalism, everybody gets saved, even the devil, Adolf Hitler, everybody's going to be saved. What did he begin to do? Went right on public television, went right on Oprah Winfrey, says, I am for gay same-sex marriages. Right away. You know, if everybody gets saved, then you can do whatever you want. There's no more accountability. Everybody's going to make it in. And now he's Oprah Winfrey's spiritual advisor. We need to pray for Oprah Winfrey. I mean, Oprah Winfrey is in for trouble. And of course, Oprah's living with her boyfriend and has been for many years. And she's giving everybody spiritual advice and marriage advice from her show. Well, now she has Rob Bell as her spirit guide to help her. His shows across the country are sold out, and people wait in line hours in advance of them to hear this man tell you to doubt the word. Don't believe the evangelical pastors. And we have another apostate among us. Rob Bell, I even have it. Maybe next, if you remind me, next Wednesday, I'll bring it. I used to get CDs from a ministry that sent out the top sermons that were preached by really great evangelical pastors. Rob Bell is in one of those because I got it way back like in 2007 when he was preaching the gospel. And I listened to his message. I didn't at the time. Nobody knew that he was going to become a heretic, but I was listening to his message. I liked Rob Bell. He was really a good preacher, very good communicator. And now look at where he's at. Look at where he's at today. A man who had a mega church, 11,000 member church, and then he stands up and he announces that everybody is going to be saved. No hell. Huh? Yeah. So the apostates are among us. They're in our churches. And we need to be discerning. What Jude says here, though it was ugly, it's so accurate. You can spot the false teachers. They're after money. They're sexually immoral. They're arrogant. They do all the things that Jude has said. And when I read that book on Jim Jones, that was hard for me to read. I had to read it because some people were asking me a lot of questions about Jim Jones. And I didn't know a lot about Jim Jones. And I didn't want to have to read about Jim Jones. But after I read about Jim Jones, everything that Jim Jones did, 2 Peter and Jude talked about already. The very things that were in that book on his life were in the Bible already 2,000 years in advance. The Word of God is true. It is right. And you can follow it, and it will be accurate. All right. All right, any questions?